Hey, awesome Nesties. Welcome back to our second panel for OwlCrate-A-Con. This is Social Media Sorcery, and we are here with the amazing Kevin T. Norman and the equally amazing Jason Headley. I'm so excited for this panel. So over the next hour, we're just going to be talking about social media, getting some expert advice from two of the best, and just talking about engaging with readers and how influencers shape our bookish landscape. We're very, very excited. So we're going to start off with just a little introduction. I'm Sophie. I work for Team OwlCrate. I'm our social media lead. And we've also got Tara here with us, who is one of our amazing The Nest moderators. And I'm going to throw it over to Kevin. Do you want to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, I feel like I should have prepared something. My name's Kevin. I go by Kevin T. Norman on social media. I think when I made my account, I didn't realize my name would stick with me the entire time. Like, I didn't think ahead. So it's not a very original name like Jason's, but it is mine. And my favorite book right now, I would say, is Babel by R.F. Kuang. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to say in this to introduce myself, but that's me. This is my bookshelf.
We love it.
This is my bookshelf.
I love how we're all just in front of our bookshelves because you've got to bring the vibes. It's fine.
Right.
Great. Jason, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Wow, what an introduction that was, Kevin. My name is Jason Headley. I go by Easy Cat on the internet. I'm a TikToker, bookstagrammer, booktuber. I'm pretty much everywhere. What did you say your favorite book right now? Oh my god!
Yeah, like currently.
My favorite book right now is Onder and Santi Were Here by Johnny Garzavilla. And this is my bookshelf, and I think I just hit all the notes. Okay.
Good job.
That's 10 out of 10. We're going to jump in, but I'm also going to remind everyone that we're going to have some giveaways and 2 ARC drops as well throughout this live panel, which is going to be quite fun. We'll do them a little bit later, so you can stick around for that. And shall I jump into the first question? I love some of these. Some of these are thinkers. Okay, I'm going to pre-warn you. Earlier on in our first panel, Tara did hit Cade and Chloe with some tough questions that they had to sit on. But don't worry, it's fine.
I'm scared now.
I am very scared.
It's fine. We're just you guys know Book Talk, you know Bookagram, you know your stuff. So it's fine.
Allegedly, okay.
Hopefully.
Okay, so let's start with what strategies and techniques do you find the most effective in building a supportive and interactive community of readers on your social platforms? I feel like that's just a fancy way of just saying, do you have plans in place to try and bring readers into your space?
Oh, that's interesting.
Great question.
Kevin, do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
Oh, no, I introduced myself first. It's all you.
Oh my gosh, that's a hard question. I think that some days I feel like I have a plan, and some days I go in with zero plan. I always say that, I try to create content from 2 different lenses. So I create a lot of content that is what I would call like capture content. So content that if it was the first time someone saw my page, it would feel inviting and it would give them a reason to stick around, right? That's the content that a lot of times is following trends. It's things that help people kind of discover you and then start to follow you. And then I create most of my content is actually nurture content. So that's content that is stuff that if you've been around for a while, the longer you stick around, the more you're going to get out of that content, right? So that might be like a series, right? So like right now I'm reading all of Discworld or all of Narnia, and people get to see me go through those series and they get to follow kind of that journey. So I think when I think about strategy, I'm always thinking of like, what's something that is a great, like, one-hit wonder, like make something that a lot of people can see and maybe like bring in some new audience members. But then what are the kind of things I can do to really keep people around, keep people engaged? And to that end, when I talk about series and keeping people engaged, I listen a lot to my audience. So when my audience is like, we really want you to read this, or we really want you to check this out, or I'll even ask, like, what series would you like me to do next? What would you like me to read, or what would you like me to watch? And really get input, because then it kind of gives ownership, and I'm able to give them what they're looking for as well. So yeah, that's a couple things.
That's great. I mean, I really enjoyed your recent Merlin reaction as well.
Yeah. And that was all because, viewers were like, this is what we want you to watch. And so I was like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah. I never really, until I watched your video, I didn't pick up on certain social cues within Merlin. It was great. I was howling when I was watching it. Kevin, what about you?
Yeah, in a very similar vein to what Jason was saying is listening to the audience for sure, because you'll see that on social media, certain books are being talked about. People are collectively reading something, and I think it's important to kind of lean into that. And it's a great way to build community because it's something we can all collectively share, which has led me to read some books where I'm like, that wasn't for me. And then it also led me to books where I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that. Like, let's all geek out about it. Another like approach for me is when I'm creating content, I think to myself, is this something I would share if I saw somebody else make it? So it's really about, I think, creating content that is shareable, is that like you can tag a friend in or send to them something funny to lighten their day. I do get serious on my channel as well when it comes to like talking about LGBTQ plus issues or um, certain book people companies and things like that. So I do I feel like if you have an audience, you should use it to fight for the things you're passionate about. And when it comes to creating content, it's really creating content for your community, listening to what they are expressing to you. Like I posted a dark romance book and everyone's like, I want reaction videos. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. Let's try it. And then also creating content for yourself. So like 2 for them, 1 for you. And just finding that balance is really, really important.
Those were great answers, guys. You did not need to be worried about that. They were.
I'm still nervous.
Well thought out.
That's so good. So insightful.
So kind of going off of what Jason was saying, in terms of trends, how do you stay up on trends and developments in the bookish space? And then how do you incorporate them into your content?
Oh, that's easy. You just have to watch 7 hours of TikTok every day.
Oh, I'm there.
Just, yeah. I mean, yeah, a lot of it just comes from watching what other people are doing.
And do you feel a lot of pressure to stay on top of everything?
No.
I will say sometimes yes, but at the end of the day, no. And when it comes to like trends, it's pretty much just being on the app and then reminding yourself that like if you're doom scrolling, it's all research and it's all part of your job and what you do. That's how I justify it. But trends is kind of how I started my TikTok channel in the first place. I saw what everyone else was doing, and then I was like, how can I make that more uniquely for me and the kind of audience I want to build? So I would take trending audios that weren't in the book space and then bring them into the bookish space and give them like a bookish twist. And then eventually I saw a shift in TikTok and content creation where trending audio kind of was slowly phasing out and a lot more original content was being needed or wanted to be consumed. So I think what's really important is just seeing the shifts and learning to adjust to them, or else you're just going to fall behind.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I say no because I think trends are, I love trends in that it's always a really easy piece of content to make, right? So if I have like a really busy day or I've got 5 minutes to make a video in the morning rather than a whole day to put something together, a trend video is great because it's something I can put out really quickly that adds content, to my page, but it's not something I have to think super hard about. But to that end, I never want to be making the same video that 300 other people already made, right? Like if I'm going to get in on a trend, I want to come in it with a different perspective, come at it with like a fresh way of making that video. Like Kevin said, I really like to do trends, like bring trends that are outside of book talk into book talk and find a way to adjust those to what I'm doing. But trends isn't just about, when we talk about trends, I think people hear like trending sound, right? Or like, right now there's a trend on TikTok of like people doing these NPC AI lives, which is like one of the most wild things I've ever seen in my life. But trends is also, I mean, it's a whole thing. Trends is also, like Kevin said, when you realize that TikTok is really, and people are really looking for, more discussion videos, or when you realize that people are starting to shift towards, certain aspects of books, or people are shifting towards, a certain type of discussion of a book, right? It's not just about like a trending sound or like trends as we normally think about it. It's also about like what is doing well on the platform and what people are more likely to watch, which makes you kind of think outside the box a little bit as well.
I think you're both very good at creating that kind of more evergreen content as well, where it's always relevant. And I think with TikTok, because of the way they push out certain videos, even if someone's coming across one of your videos 2-3 months later, it still feels very relevant. And people, I feel like, still connect to both of your content really, really well. And I think that's something that TikTok does quite well. And the way your content comes across on TikTok does really well because of that. How do you find balancing that kind of everyday bookish content with the trends? Do you have a structure, or do you just like post it out? You just post it, or do you think, oh, because this is trending at the moment, I need to post it now and I'll save that video for later?
I don't really save anything for later, which is why I post like 6 times a day. I don't know how to save for later. I just like to post stuff. I kind of often throw things at the wall and just see what sticks. It's funny because TikTok has a feature right now where almost every day it will give you like a video from the same day last year. And almost every day I'll repost it as like a brand new video. Like I don't say like last year I made that. Sometimes I do, but in general, I'll just post it as like a brand new video and people will watch it as if it's the first time that video has ever been on my page. And I think it's really cool to be able to use content multiple times like that. And obviously you might not do that with a video that didn't perform very well, but if it's like one of your best videos, reposting it every 6 months to a year is awesome. It's a fun little Easter egg for people that have been following you for a long time, because they're like, I remember when you first posted this. And it's going to be brand new for a lot of your audience as well, which I think is really, really cool.
I think that's a pro tip right there, reposting your content.
Yeah.
It's something that not a lot of people do. You don't have to always constantly make fresh content. And like you say, lots of people are going to be constantly joining your followers. They're going to be constantly joining in. That's a great tip. Get
as much use as you can out of the content you make. Like, use it as much as you possibly can, because there are going to be people who saw it, but there's going to be way more people that didn't see it, right? So a great example of this is last year I watched and reacted to every single episode of new Doctor Who. I am now posting those. I'm in like season 2 of posting those on my Instagram, and everybody that watches them is watching them for the first time and doesn't realize that I've already done this before, right? But that's content that is already made. I literally just have to upload it to Instagram, and it's an extra video I can add. You already made the content. Use it as much as humanly possible, because you want to get as much out of every piece of content that you make as you possibly can.
Yeah, Jason, that's so true. Jason has a better workflow than I do. I'm the type of person. No, but I'm the type of person who I will get inspired, make the video, save it to my normal posting time that day, post it, and then do the same cycle again. I don't really plan things ahead that much. I will save like certain sounds or certain ideas, like in my notes app. It'll be like TikTok, Instagram Reel ideas. But like Jason was saying, to redo content, like you can repost it, but you could also, if you want to change something about it, redo it, refilm it. So it's like, it looks new, but it's still old content. And I find that's worked for me on Reels, because I've been on TikTok first and was on TikTok for like 2.5 years. And then Jason really encouraged me, like, just post on Reels. And that's been a great place where I've been able to explore different content that I've never even put on TikTok yet, just to see how people react. And it's really interesting because you'll see 2 very different audiences on TikTok and Instagram Reels. And you kind of got to find that balance of creating content that can kind of please both, but also some content I make is strictly TikTok. Some I make is strictly Instagram Reels.
Do you both put the same content as well now on something like YouTube Shorts, or are we just forgetting about Shorts at the moment?
I've not leaned into it, but I know Jason has.
Here's the thing about YouTube Shorts that you need to know. First of all, you can only post 60 seconds. So a lot of my content is over 60 seconds, but if I have something that is under 60 seconds that I think would do well there, I will put it on YouTube Shorts. The algorithm on YouTube Shorts is hot mess wild. Like you'll have like 5 views for like 24 hours and then it'll jump to 1,000 views. Like it's very confusing. And I have found that the YouTube short watcher is the meanest of all of the watchers on the internet. Like they are, they will attack you for anything. And not like the normal things, right? Like on TikTok or Instagram, people might like call out like, hey, or I don't know if you meant to say it this way, or maybe a better way of saying it. Like they want to have a conversation, right? And they want to help you be a better creator, and they want to talk to you about ways that you can present better. If they have anything negative to say, it's a lot of times that. Though there are still mean comments on those platforms, but on YouTube, they will just go in. Like there is no. They are ready to be. They are waiting to be mean on YouTube. So I don't love shorts, but I'm kind of experimenting with. I'm doing a new reaction series now that I'm keeping under a minute for every episode of it that I post. So I'm trying it on YouTube Shorts to see how it goes. Mixed reactions so far, so we'll see.
I think this is one thing that people forget as well, that even when you have platforms like both of you do, you're still trialing things and you're still testing them out. And I think a lot of smaller creators get a bit scared when they see, oh, I need to try out all these different places, or I don't want it to be put out unless it's perfect. And they probably compare themselves a lot to bigger accounts as well. Did you both deal with that kind of thing when you were starting out in your like book talk journey?
I still deal with that. I don't know about you, Jason, but like, yeah, I think it's hard sometimes for me to take risks in my content. I'm slowly learning to do that more and more. But it hasn't been easy because I am afraid to fail, because I think in a way, if I fail, then it shows to people I'm not worth following, which isn't true at all. Like you're never going to have a viral video after viral video. It's just not realistic for like 99% of us. But what I will say, what I will learn and having this mindset is that you have to try and take risks. And I look to my fellow creators, like Jason, for example, is a great example. I watch what he does and I'm like, I need to take more risks. I just need to try something. I should watch something and react to it. Or like, and I think being on Bookstagram now and TikTok, having multiple platforms to post on really helps ease the anxiety and gives you, it makes you like care less in the sense of, I'm just going to try stuff.
Yeah. I mean, going kind of back to your original question, I got very lucky because I got into book talk like pretty much from the ground floor. I started in my first book talk video was in like April of 2020. At that time, there were like a handful of book talkers, and I saw Kate Jacobs, who is one of the first people that was really using the term book talk. I think she was the first person to use that term. And I saw her making a book review, and I was like, I like reading. I want to review books on TikTok. And so I started making book reviews and making bookish videos. So I early on didn't ever really have a moment of being able to like compare myself to people that had like a much larger following than I did because I was in so early. But two things I'll say is I do compare myself a lot to like creators that are bigger, that are at levels where I'm like would maybe like to get someday. And not in a, oh, they're so much better than me kind of way, but in a, what are they doing that works, right? Like, what are they doing that their audience likes? And how can I bring that into what I do, right? Like, I'm always looking at that. And the other thing is, I've said this many times, but I treat my page like a television network. So what that means is if I come up with an idea that's something new that I've never done before, I'm going to post a couple videos trying to do that and see how it does. And if it does really well, I'm going to lean into that. I'm going to do more of it, right? And if it doesn't do well at all and people don't respond to it, people don't engage with it, I'm just going to quietly, cancel that show and move on and keep doing, right? So a great example of this is I recently, a couple months ago, I made a stupid video where I was using a bracket filter to try and judge what was the best Barbie movie, even though I'd never seen a Barbie movie before, right? And that led, because there was such a response to that led to me watching and reacting to Barbie movies, which ended up being this like really fun, super engaging thing for my audience. But I never would have known that if I hadn't tried something just completely ridiculous to see what happened, right? And so I'm a big fan of like trying things out, seeing how they go. The worst thing that can happen is people just don't really care, right? Like they don't watch it, they don't like it, they don't engage with it. And that just means, okay, well, I'm going to try something different next time.
I mean, I very much enjoyed you doing the English biscuit bracket. Because being English, I was loving the comments of everyone that was triggered when you were pronouncing
The comments
biscuit
were
wrong.
feral on that video. I can't even look at the comments on that video because they're so mean. I'm like,
Honestly,
nope, this is a no for me.
There is something about
Woo.
us Brits and our biscuits. I felt like a bit territorial.
Yeah, I felt scared.
It was great. I highly enjoyed it. So
I think that actually leads into a next question, though, which is how do you handle negative and criticism on social media, and what steps do you take to maintain a positive and supportive environment?
Oof. Kevin and I were just talking about this.
Yeah, last night. I think I'll touch on how to maintain a positive environment is to like Jason and I, we have a group of fellow book talkers who we can chat amongst each other. And I think it's a great space we have where we can vent and we can learn and we can grow together and remind each other that like everything's going to be okay. For me, when it comes to negative comments, I just sometimes don't read my comments. And it's solely because it's hard. I was telling Jason this last night where it's like, I want to build community and it's very important for me to respond to people in comments and talk with them. But amongst the good comments, there's also bad comments. And so I have to read them all to find the right ones. And it can just be, it can be difficult sometimes. Like some of the things people say or like, are upset at you about, like somebody in my last video was upset I had my pronouns in my bio, and I'm like, I don't know how that affects you in any way, but just like the comments don't really bother me, but when you see them enough, they kind of get under your skin. And so I try to avoid comments. So that's why if anyone ever comments on my stuff and you're like, he's not responding, it's because low-key I'm scared, but also like it's hard. It's tough, especially if a video goes viral. Then I'm like, I can't look at that comment section. It's scary in there.
Absolutely. You have to protect your peace.
I totally agree. I do try to read. I don't respond to every comment, but I try to read every comment for the most part, unless something goes crazy, like a biscuit video. Then I have to avoid it. But even like DMs, like I get a lot of like really harsh DMs pretty much every day, and I think I can only read those if I'm in the right headspace, right? Like I have to be like prepared. Like, okay, I can read comments now because I'm feeling all right. If I'm in like a bad headspace, I can't do it, and I try really hard to not be reactionary. So if I see something that really upsets me, I try to not react like in the moment to it, because that's just going to end up in me saying something mean back, and then it's just like mean. Like it doesn't help anything. Yeah. Also, like don't be afraid to use the block button, right? Like the block button is your friend. And here's the thing: is it can seem. I think when I first started out, I was like, I don't want to block anybody. That just seems so mean and it seems so harsh, right? But at the end of the day, if somebody is leaving comments that are just mean, right? Like they're not trying to better you. They're not trying to help you see something that maybe you missed, or trying to help you be more inclusive, or, those things also happen, but those I think are really important. But, somebody who's just like, I hate seeing your face on my For You page, right? Let me help you, right? Like, let me help you by blocking you so you don't have to see my face on your For You page anymore, right? And so I've become a really big fan of the block button. I think it is a very important tool in the social media creators toolbox, because there are some people that they don't care about you. They don't want you to be a better creator. They don't want to give you feedback. They just want to be cruel. And those people don't deserve to see the content that you worked hard on, right? Like they gotta go. And like Kevin said, I think there is so much power in the group chat, the concept of the group chat, because not only does it mean you have a place to vent, but it also has a place. It's also been a place where, I know that there are certain friends of mine that if I'm upset about something, I can go to them and be like, I'm upset about this, and they might help me see a different perspective. What's great about that is then I am not doing that reaction of being upset in like a video or a comment that might end up becoming a problem, right? Like how often on platforms do we see someone respond to something and then they end up making a fool of themselves on the internet, right? It's great to have a place where you can privately discuss and kind of like cool down and get it all out, rather than discussing that with everyone and their mother on the internet,
Absolutely. And Kevin, this is kind of something you've touched on previously, like a few videos ago. But how do you feel about the kind of feedback you get as men in the bookish space?
That's a great question. It's kind of it's like a Jason, how would you answer this?
Well, I mean, it's tricky, right? Because
Yeah.
I think the important thing to remember is like the bookish spaces on the internet, Book Talk, Bookstagram, are primarily female-dominated spaces, right? And I think it's important to remember that and to keep that in mind, that there are going to be moments like we've seen on TikTok where, you know, a typically attractive man will join the platform and then quickly grow, right? And and I think there's a lot of discussion about that and what does that look like, and how do we navigate that? And I think the most important thing that I remind myself of every day is just to be respectful, right? Knowing that we are in a space that is primarily female, I think it's important to also to then remember, okay, we have to respect that, right? Like we have to respect that space. I know my audience on TikTok, because you can see how the demographic breaks down, is 91% female, right? So I want to make sure that I am being respectful of those amazing people who are, you know, following me and watching my videos. And I think a lot of times where guys in the bookish space get in trouble is that they forget that respect piece, right? Like, and I think that goes even further than just being respectful of, you know, just, you know, the female audience, but being respectful of everyone who engages with your content in some way. But yeah, it is definitely something interesting to navigate. And I think when you add the fact that we are both queer men in the bookish space, that also gets really interesting to navigate as well. So yeah, it's definitely like an ongoing conversation that's happening at the moment.
Absolutely.
Being a queer man in like a female dominated space is a lot more comforting to me, because that's kind of like how I grew up. I was always closer with girls than I ever was with other guys. And so when I see some comments, because you will see comments of like people be like, oh, I don't trust men on Book Talk or Bookstagram or things like that. I don't take it personal, because I'm like, one, I understand exactly where you're coming from. So it's like, I respect that full-heartedly. And two, I don't really take it personal, because it's like, I kind of feel like being queer men, we're in our own category that is a little removed from your stereotypical straight guy who just enters this female dominated space, takes a shirt off and holds a book up or whatever. So, I mean, it is like an interesting thing, but I still feel very comfortable here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I feel very comfortable. And I think it comes down to that whole thing. Like, I think the only reason you would maybe be upset by those comments when people are upset with men in these bookish spaces is if you are part of the problem, right? Like if you're triggered by someone being upset about that and you can't understand why, because if you're on Book Talk and you're keeping your eyes open, you know why people are leaving those comments, because time and time again, we've seen some really like fishy things happen. And I think, you know, if you can't see that, like if you can see all that and understand it, I think that you're not going to, like Kevin and I said, we're not going to be upset by it, because we also understand, we get it. We get where you're coming from. We understand why that trust is not there, because time and time again, that trust has been broken, right? So we get it. And we also hope and work to make our content so that you never have to feel that way on our page, hopefully, right? Like we really push to make our pages feel inclusive, and like you never have to feel like, oh, here's another one, right?
Absolutely. No, I think those are all great points. I always just kind of wondered if you guys ended up getting more slack strictly because you're men.
I just to add to that, I don't find that, because I think I lean into it like in a lot of my content you see, where it's like I'm aware of how straight men are. And what's really funny is when I make content making fun of men, the only people who really criticize it are other men. They're like getting upset at me, like, don't you know you're a man? And I'm like, yeah, and I'm aware of the faults we have in the patriarchal society we live in. So like, and so it's really interesting when the only people upset are just other men. They're like, you make a lot of jokes about men, it's really offensive. And I'm like, offensive to who? To you? Like, you're gonna be okay. Like, everything's already about you. You can just take a step back. You're gonna be fine. And I'm also a big proponent, like, the right people will follow you. So if someone doesn't want to follow you because you're a man, then okay.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have seen the Barbie movie yet, but this is what the movie's about. This conversation we're having.
We haven't.
I'm excited.
I saw it last night, and I think the reviews are very positive and a bit tearful.
Yeah, it's really good. But it's very much about this conversation, which I think is super interesting.
I love that. I'm going to jump into a couple of questions that we got from the chat. One of them, which I feel like this kind of goes into a lot about what we've been speaking about, is, do you ever feel overwhelmed or pressured to read and review certain books, especially ones that are very popular on Book Talk? Don't look over here because I do have Fourth Wing.
Kevin loves Fourth Wing.
I do love it. And I'm taking my sweet time reading it. I am so slow, y'all. I apologize. I do feel that pressure because it's like, I want to be in on the conversation. So it was like something I was talking about earlier, where it's like you make content for them and you make content for you. So like, yeah, I'm going to read the book everybody's talking about and I'm going to make content about it. But I'm also going to keep reading books I want to read that are important to me and talk about those as well. I saw this really interesting video the other day of like social media marketing, and they said you have to treat yourself as if you're a guinea pig and you're trying the things that your audience is telling you to try, which we were talking about, like Jason doing Barbie movies, me now leaning into dark romance and people wanting reaction videos. It's just like just trying things out and seeing where it takes you. But the pressure is there. But then I just remind myself at the end of the day, read what you want and what makes you happy.
Yeah, I think early on when I first started Book Talk and everybody was like, you have to read this, you have to read that, you have to read this. I think I felt very like, okay, these are the things I need to read because these are the things people want me to read and these are the videos that do well, right? And there is something to that, right? Like the more popular something is, the more people are going to connect with it because, you know, if I read like Six of Crows, for example, there are a lot more people who have read that, so they're going to connect with that a lot more than me popping up and saying, hey, here's a new book you've never heard of, but I think you should check it out. And that also has its place too, right? I think early on I did, and then there was a point which we won't get too into, but people got really mad at me for reading a really popular book, and I kind of got sent into this crazy spiral of people I'd been told to read this thing, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to read this thing, and then people were mad I was reading this thing, and I was like, okay, maybe popular books aren't for me. And every once in a while I will, like with Fourth Wing, but I'm also just very careful because people will want you to read the thing they love that's the popular thing, but then if you don't like it, they will turn on you so fast. So I think it's kind of a fine line. Nowadays, I feel a lot more pressure to try and find things to talk about that people haven't seen yet, right? Like I really want to discover something and get people excited about that thing. That to me is a lot more exciting now than, you know, reading the thing that everybody's reading, right? Because everybody's going to be talking about that book. I'm always like, ooh, what am I going to find that no one's talking about yet? Like that to me is much more exciting. But like Kevin said, it's also a balance. Like, are there going to be times where something's really popular and I end up reading it because I want to be in on the discussion? Of course. But it's just about finding that balance.
Great answers. I just have to quickly shout out to one of the comments in the chat, which is from Sil, who's our incredible general manager at OwlCrate, who's technically our boss. And she said, as a queer person, I definitely feel comfort with other queer people, and she loved the points you were both making, which was really nice. The whole team is watching.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well,
now I'm even more nervous.
We're a very supportive bunch. Love it. Oh, there's just some great questions coming in from the chat.
I love the questions.
Yeah, so many good ones. Let's scroll down this block here. What is your least favorite book that's popular right now? I feel like that's a good one after that conversation. Let's have some tea.
Kevin, you go first.
I also had tea in my mug, but I don't. But that was
I'm trying to. I want to say Addie LaRue.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Here's the thing. While reading it, I was like, oh, I'm really enjoying this. And then nothing happened. And I think I was just really disappointed, not in the plot, but the lack of growth amongst our main character that I followed for 400 pages or whatever, how long it took me. It felt like a lifetime. But
yes.
but everyone loves it. And I wanted to love it in the same way, but it wasn't for me, and that's okay.
That's always disappointing though, when it's a book you think you're gonna love and then you go into it.
Yeah.
It's not that you dislike it, it's just that it didn't reach your expectations.
Yeah, completely.
He dislikes that book. Let's not.
Wow, Jason, throw me under the bus. People are gonna start unfollowing me. They're like, he hates Addie LaRue.
That's when I tell you that V. Schwabs is watching.
Oh, she's like in the chat. She's like, unfollow.
Listen, her writing, gorgeous. That particular story, it didn't do it for me.
Victoria's like, what was that they said about the block button?
I will say, but speaking of that, just to touch on that real quick, it is interesting, like harder being in the book space, talking about authors and then being at the same events as them or like interacting. And it like makes me feel weird sometimes, but that's a different rant for another time.
We'll get back. We're going to circle back to that.
Jason, what's a book you didn't like?
Yeah, still.
I mean, mine is Fourth Wing, as we all know. You
I
know
don't know why you didn't like it. I know,
Um,
but I don't understand why. Like, it has everything. It scratches every edge.
Is it because it's been overhyped? Do you think?
You know what? You know how when you get an itch and then you scratch it and then another itch pops up somewhere and then you just end up being annoyed by having to scratch everywhere? That's what reading Fourth Wing is like.
Wow. Maybe I
No.
have more words about
I loved it.
Addie.
You're like, you know what? Maybe I do have more to say.
You know what?
Fourth Wing was definitely a no from me. I totally get, I mean, I said this in my review. I totally get why people love it. And no shade to people who love it because I totally get it, right? Like it is a highly marketable book. Like it is a summer blockbuster of a book. And I totally get it. But Kevin, speaking of the group chat, they got to see me slowly like degrade into, I don't know if I like this, to no, I don't think I like this, to like, because it is so rare that I DNF a book. Like I will rage finish a book. Like if I have to, like I will hate read to get to the end because I don't want to not finish it. Because I've had experiences where I didn't love a book and then the last 10 pages convinced me that I liked it, right? So I'm always like convinced that there's going to be a last 10 pages that's going to change my mind. Fourth Wing was not that way though. So
Do you find
Sorry, Tara. I just want to know, when you get to a book like that, do you then want to read the sequel? I know Addie LaRue doesn't have a sequel, but because sometimes people do that. They're like, oh, it was okay, but
no, I mean, okay, so I read Throne of Glass and I was like, what is the hype around this? But for some reason, I wanted to go back and keep reading. And do I think they're great? No. But am I oddly in love with like some of these characters? Yes. And so I do find like sometimes, yeah, if you keep going, it gets better.
I think
But
with
I'm
YA
not.
books as well, especially when the first one can be very young adult.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it does take books a little time to grow if it's a long series. That's my diplomatic answer.
I mean, if I don't like a first book, it is very unlikely that I'm going to read a sequel. Like I'm a big believer in books being great on their own terms. So like one of my big pet peeves I talk about a lot is when books duologies are notorious for this, as well as like YA duologies and YA trilogies are notorious for this, where the first book just doesn't have a third act, right? Like they have a first and they have a second act, and then they just end.
Yeah.
And then you have to read the next book to find out what happens. And it drives me crazy because I'm like, the book, even though the book ends, or even though the book is going into another book, it should still have a third act, right? It's still a story that needs to have a like beginning, middle, and end. And so if a first book doesn't sell me, it's like very, 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 very unlikely that I'm going to keep going, because I'm like, I'm not a big believer in, no, you have to read after the first 7 books. It gets so good. It's so good. Like, no, I'm sorry. We're done. I'm out.
That's gold. Do you find that when a book is really hyped up on Book Talk, that you go into it with higher expectations, and that may be why you're not vibing with it? Do you find that it has any sort of influence on how much you enjoy the book?
I would say like probably in the beginning of my bookish journey, I went in with like really high expectations, and then I think I was just disappointed so many times that I now go into things with my expectations kind of low, and then I become pleasantly surprised.
I actually think I go into reading almost every book with high expectations. Like, if you follow me on Goodreads, you know, I'm like a chronic like 5-star giver. Like, I give 5 stars to so many things.
You get 5 stars.
Yeah, you get 5 stars, you get 5 stars. And I go into every book kind of just like expecting to love it. And then I kind of like almost every time when I start a book, I feel like it starts at 5 stars, and then it like things that happen within the book start to like knock stars off like as I go, if it's a book that I don't like. I think the one thing I will say about the hyped book is I'm very much someone, you know, the type of people where like the more you tell them to do something, the less they want to do it. I'm very much that type of person. So like Kevin knows that a bunch of people had read Babel, and I was not reading Babel because they were like, it's so good. And I'm like, I get it. You know, the more they talked about how good it was, the more I was like, I'm not going to read that. Finally, I read it and I loved it, right? Like I ended up loving that book. But I don't know. I think if anything, the more hyped a book is, the less likely I'm going to even want to read it. But if I sit down to read it, I'm gonna give it a fair shot and expect the best and hope that it gives me that.
That's so good. Before we jump into more questions, I'm just gonna let everyone know we have got some giveaways. So you can drop some comments if you want to win. We've got 2 ARC copies to give away from, I actually can't even remember the publisher right now, which is so bad. There were so many publishers. But we're giving away our Cursed Love and also People to Follow, which I actually have a copy of this, which Team OwlCrate brought back for me from Yarl West, which I was very, very happy about. So if you'd like an ARC copy of one of these books, then drop some comments, and Jordan, our little angel watching, is gonna pick some winners. And then I'm also giving away 2 $50 gift cards to my small bookish business, Reader Society, which is bookish jewelry and accessories. So if you'd like a gift card as well, we're throwing those away as well. Everyone gets a gift card. Well, 2 people. I'm not made of money. I'm only small, friends, okay? So Jordan will pick some winners. So if you want some freebies, you want some ARCs, comment away. And I guess we'll jump into some other questions. There is one I really want to ask Kevin first.
Oh no.
No, this is fun. How has it been being invited to premieres like Shadow and Bone and Ben Barnes and going to Queen Charlotte? Also, I've been very much enjoying your red carpet outfits. They have been
Thank you.
so good.
They've all been designed.
Does it feel like crazy?
Yeah, it feels unreal. Like even being there, it doesn't feel like it's actually happening. It's a very surreal experience. I don't really, because I didn't know talking about books could lead to like moments like that. Like I just started talking about books because I wanted people to read more queer stories and realize there was more out there than just Call Me by Your Name. And so from just doing like my little pandemic hobby to now getting to walk red carpets with like celebrities I admire of like book adaptions I'm super huge fans of is like wild to me, because I remember watching Prince Prince Caspian. And so when I met Ben Barnes, I was like, you will always be my Prince Caspian. And he's like, oh my gosh, and then gave me a hug and then told me I looked good. And I was like, you look good. Also, are we flirting? So it's
And then he was like, security, can you please
security, get this guy out. But no, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a wild ride. Yeah, I think just also being in LA lends itself to that. And it really is kind of one of those industries where it's like, you kind of you got to network. Like even going to these premieres, it's still work when I'm there. It's not just fun. Like I have to create content. I have to meet people, talk with people. So it's like you're always working, even though it does look super glamorous, and it can be, but it's also very stressful because I don't have a stylist. I do everything myself and hope for the best.
Great doing it. It's amazing. I feel like this goes into another question from our comments really well. Saying, is it weird when you guys get recognized, or are you just used to it now? I feel like that's a problem. I'm used to it.
I would say Jason experiences it a lot more than I do.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say like I experienced it a lot in like bookish spaces. I've also had, what's really interesting is people will see me in the bookstore, not say anything to me, and then like DM me or comment and be like, I saw you in the bookstore. I'm like, why didn't you just say hi? Like one girl saw me in a bar and let me know the next day. I was like, so it happens, but I don't know. Like when I see celebrities, I never go up to them. I just like clock them from afar and be like, hi. And that's, but yeah, Jason, your experience?
I mean, yeah, I get recognized a lot. I think, and Kevin can attest to this. When it first started happening, it was really hard for me because I have pretty severe social anxiety. I get very nervous in like public spaces when there's like a lot of people. And so having people come up to me and then, want to have a discussion with me, and also like they know you, right? Like they know things about you that you'll be like, you've never met this person before, but they're already asking you like, how are the cats? How's your husband? I'm like, what? Who are you? Right. Our first Y'all West we went to was the first time I got recognized like a lot. And it was, I mean, when we left that event, I was like, my social battery was drained. Like I was exhausted. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to look at anybody because I was like not prepared for that. And it was, I mean, it just was a lot. Now I've gotten a lot more comfortable with it. Now I'm more used to it, which is good. And it doesn't like freak me out as much as it used to, which is wonderful because now it happens a lot. Like like when I go to Disney, I get recognized a lot. When I go to Universal a lot, I get recognized there. We'll get recognized when we're out to like dinner somewhere. I think the challenging part, like, when like you're with like your group of close friends and like you're talking about things that like you'd only talk about with your close friends. Now I'm like hyper aware of that because I remember one time we were waiting in line at Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios, and we were talking, I mean, the thing we were talking about, like, should not have been being discussed in a public space. I'm not going to repeat it, but it was vile. And somebody walked by, and I swear they were like 16 years old. She's like, oh my God, I love your book talk. And I'm like, what were we just talking about? What words were we just discussing? I mean, I've never been so embarrassed in my life. And now I'm like hyper aware of that when I'm out places. Like, okay, let's, we can have fun, but let's, make sure that we're on, at least I'm on a little bit of my best behavior because there are people watching and listening.
Do you mind when people come up to you?
No. Oh, when people come up and say hi or like, or I recognize you, no, not at all. I think it's really cool now. At first, it was like very scary to me. It wasn't like I was upset with them for doing it. It was just like very nerve wracking because I was like, oh my gosh, because you're always worried you're going to like disappoint people. Like you're not going to be the person that they expected, right? And it was just very weird to have people I'd never met before like approach me because I was like, oh, like it was very stressful at first, but now I've gotten really used to it and I don't mind. Now it's totally cool. And now I'm like prepared for it. So yeah.
I'll look at some of these other
Sophie,
questions.
it looks like we have some winners if you want to announce them.
I'm going to let you because I butcher everyone's usernames.
Well, I was really hoping that you would do that again.
I parred it off onto you.
Oh, okay.
Well, you can do it.
Gormless Bookish Bean, and
It's a good one. I like that
Scale
name.
13 both won the Reader Society shop gift
look at
card.
that.
You. And then KDB won the arc for Our Cursed Love, and Bertily won the arc for People to Follow.
Ah, congrats, guys. We love freebies. We've got
Congrats.
a really requested question as well here. And Jordan's added a note for us that you have to be honest.
Oh no.
What are your favorite queer books?
I think Jason and I, I was gonna say we have the same one, so one of us might say it. Well, I'll say it.
We have the same one. We're cool with that.
I don't know
Well,
what you're talking
obviously-
about, which is concerning.
Once
Less?
I say it, you're gonna yes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
A book called Less by Andrew Sean Greer is one of my favorite queer books, and then Song of Achilles, which may sound cliche, but I do have a tattoo. I was like, how's it? That's my Song of Achilles tattoo. It wraps around. Song of Achilles. Let me think more. Less.
My current favorite one is Onder and Santi Were Here by Johnny
That's
Garcia.
right.
I'm like wildly obsessed with that book. I just think it's so good. I also just recently read oh no, what's it called? The Wicked Bargain was really good. I can't remember the name of the author off the top of my head, but
Gabe is actually going to be on our next panel.
oh, so good. That book was
There you go.
phenomenal. Yeah, The Wicked Bargain was awesome. The Honeys is really good. That's another one I think both Kevin and I really enjoyed, by Ryan LaSala. I'm also been reading the series A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which is by Becky Chambers, which is just delightfully queer. Everything that they write is very queer. I'm a huge fan. So those are some off the top of my head.
That is Jordan's favorite book. That's what she's.
Jordan's in here on the chat, just going ham.
I love when we get past book recommendations. We're all just like looking at the book.
I'm all like, let me look.
What can I spot?
Well, literally, someone will be like, "What's your favorite book?" And I will be like, "What is a book?" I cannot think of a single thing. My mind goes blank.
The book. They're like, "What happened in that book?" I don't remember. There was people.
I don't know. There's some people. This is why I don't like when there's like a big break between like book 1 and book 2, because I will forget everything. So y'all better include like a synopsis in the front that like lets me know where book 1 ended off.
Yeah.
All right, I feel like we've got a little bit of time left, maybe for some more social media questions. Oh,
that's why we're here. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
About socials. Sure, that is life, though, isn't it? Is there any ones that you see that you want to ask?
Sorry, I'm just going through. There's that one big block one that.
Oh, I've asked some from that one. There is
a
one.
block of questions.
Yeah, there's so many. Everyone is flooding us with questions.
Do you have any tips for not getting caught up in the numbers of social media?
It's hard. I mean, what I will say, and Kevin actually mentioned this earlier, I think diversifying where I was posting really helped a lot. So when I was just on TikTok, I think I was very hyper-focused. Like every video, I was like, how's it doing? How's it doing? Is it doing well? Are people watching it? Now, because I post on TikTok and Instagram and Shorts, and I post some stuff on Threads, and, I'm just posting in a lot of different places, because it like spreads your attention, I feel like you get less hyper analytical about what you're doing. I still feel like, and I'm sure Kevin feels this way too, when you start to get really close to like a big number, right? Like when you hit, like I know Kevin just hit 100,000 on Instagram, right? Like when you get close to it, which is very exciting, when you get close to a big number, you start to like hyper fixate on everything. And there's just really not a great way out of that. But I think the most important thing to me is that like, I always remind myself, like, am I having fun? Like, did I have fun making that content? Like, I'm doing one reaction series right now where like the numbers are very hit or miss. Like one video will do really well. One video, almost no one will watch. But I keep asking myself, like, are you having fun making this? If you are, then that's fine. That can be like, that's all that really matters. Right. So I try to remind myself that every time I, have a video that doesn't do as well as I wanted it to, I'll ask myself, like, did you have fun making it? If you did, that's all that really matters.
Yeah, I would say try a whole bunch of different things that you enjoy, and then see what what lands, and if you're getting a response for something, kind of like lean into that and explore that and see where that will take you. Because I have fellow creators who aren't in the book space who like I follow and admire, and it's been so fascinating watching them. They would do one thing and it really wasn't working, and they would do it for a while, and then they switch what they were doing, and now it's like hit after hit after hit because they found something people liked, and they discovered that by just trying different things and not worrying about the numbers. And if you are someone who worries about numbers, it's happens honestly to all of us. Back to what we were saying about having a group chat or like a group of friends that you could just talk with, vent. I think it's really important to have like a support system.
And kind of going off that a little bit, how can you tell like, hey, something's just not working? Or is it the algorithm? Because Lord knows the TikTok algorithm is not always the kindest thing in the world.
It's a great question.
I think if I post something on TikTok, Instagram, and even Shorts, and it doesn't really do well in any of those places, then it's probably not working. What I'll sometimes see is I'll post something on TikTok and it will do really well, but it won't do very well on Instagram. Or I'll post something on Instagram and it'll do really well, but it won't do very well on TikTok, right? So I also make board game content, right? And a lot of the board game videos I post don't do very well because there's just not as big of an audience for it on TikTok. But then when I go to post it on Instagram, it might do much, much better. So to me, that tells me like people like this video. It's just that the audience for it isn't necessarily getting to see it or isn't really there on TikTok maybe, but the video and the content is still good. So it's worth still making it. But if I create something and it's just not hitting anywhere, that to me is like a good sign, like, okay, we need to reevaluate this and maybe try something different.
There's also another question from the chat. How do you handle paid partnerships? So do you typically reach out to the companies or do they reach out to you? Could you also give us a bit more of a comparison of when you started your book talk compared to now? Because I would assume a lot of people that are watching maybe have smaller accounts and are probably wondering about how they can jump on paid partnerships and working with bigger brands.
Yeah. So right now I'm very fortunate and thankful that a lot of my partnerships, they've been emailing me. They find my social media and they're coming to me. And that's why I tell creators and other people, it's very, very important for you to put your email in your bio, like have it right there, because people don't want to work that hard to like try and find your information. They'll just find somebody else that is a lot more accessible. So having that there, I think really, really helps just brands and companies and publishers find you, connect with you. There are also, though, influencer platforms that you can sign up for. And those you can see they have like brand deals, like brands will use that and like post their project or what they're working on, and then you could submit for it and then get picked and do it. Like that's how I worked with Amazon Books in the past, was through an influencer platform. So there are ways to find brands, but I find a majority of what I do has been brands coming to me.
Yeah, all the partnerships I've ever done have been people reaching out to me. Like Kevin said, definitely have your email in your bio. And I think, most importantly, create the kind of content for the kind of brands you want to work with, right? So I do a lot of work with publishers who publish like YA and middle grade. I make a lot of videos that are not promotional, that are about YA and middle grade, right? I'm now starting to do a lot of brand deals with board game companies. That's because I make a lot of I make a lot of content, just organic content about board games. Like if there's something you're interested in making content about, or doing paid partnerships with, you should be making content about that thing, right? And it's great because in that way, your page of your organic content sort of becomes like your portfolio. So people can see, what they can expect if they pay you to make a video for their project. And, like Kevin said, early on, I remember like, my first paid partnership, they had reached out to me. And at first I think once you get that first one, it's great because you can do it. And it's a great way to show other brands like what you're capable of, because they're always watching. And so just making sure that every one of those partnerships that you do. I think not only is it important to make a great video, but I think it's really important to be professional. People work with people that they like working with, right? Like be professional, be timely, answer emails, listen to feedback, ask for feedback. I think, it's just as important to make a great piece of content as it is to be someone who is enjoyable to work with from a brand perspective. I know a lot of the brands I work with on a fairly frequent basis, like every month or every other month. And it's because we've developed a relationship by working together. And I think that's really cool. So, yeah.
Do you also like to create a space where you can also promote more indie or smaller authors as well?
Yes, I think I'm not necessarily doing a lot of like brand deals for indie books because a lot of times they just don't have the budget for it. But I know both of us go out of our way to like read indie books when we can, to show indie books on our pages. I think it's all about creating a balance, right? Like it's yes, am I going to sometimes make a video in a Barnes and Noble? Absolutely. But am I also going to make videos anytime I get near an independent bookstore that I can check out? Of course, right? Like it's all about that balance of like finding, representing as much as you can on your page as possible. So, and I will say, like, a lot of the indie books that I've done like free promotion for have just been because I've developed really great, professional relationships with indie authors, and I like want to shout them from the rooftops and show their books off on my page.
I love that. I think you both have got such a great balance with the content that you put out as well. So people are watching and they're taking notes on their content strategy. Just you know where to look.
Thank you.
What? Time, for one more question. I feel like there was one that I saw from OddLibby22 in the comments saying, "What book got you into the book world?" I feel like that's a good question.
Like, I'm trying to think, like in general, or like in the book online space.
I feel like it could be any, because I feel like if I got asked that question, I'd be like, "What book did I read as a child?"
Well, my mind immediately goes to Harry Potter, long before J.K. Rowling did what she did. But that was like my first introduction into I think fantasy as a kid, and made me realize how much I love fantasy books. And I also used to listen to I had the tapes of Harry Potter, and so that was like my first introduction to also audiobooks and audio reading. And so that, like, if you tell me the first book that got me into it, I would say Harry Potter. If you ask me the first book that helped me get into the online book space, I would say Call Me by Your Name, solely because I would use that book because everyone knew what it was as like my hook to pull people in. And then I would put that book aside and be like, okay, now read all these other better LGBTQ plus books that exist. But everyone knew that book. So I was like, that's such like a gateway for people and really opened the door. So those two.
Yeah, I think the first book that got me into reading, like as an adult, because after college I went through a long period where I wasn't reading at all, which I think a lot of people experience, was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Still one of my like favorite books I've ever read. The first book review I ever did on Book Talk was The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. I recently found this out because I got a like reminder email from TikTok. It was like, on this day you posted. I'm like, oh, this is my first book review. Oh no, I got it from I don't know, somebody did I think maybe it was on, because I recently found out that I'm on famousbirthdays.com, and I think maybe they posted on there. They were like, his first book video was blah 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 blah. I think maybe that's where I saw it. I don't know. But anyway, there was
just
that.
expose yourself for Googling your name.
Jason's famous.
I mean, you got to Google your name every once in a while just to make sure that nobody's saying anything bad. And they usually are. They always are.
Always.
I think that the first book that I was really like doing series with, I remember I used to do like skits about them, were like the Court of Thorns and Roses series. I used to do skits where I pretended to be Reese from those books, and like it was just ridiculous. So if you've been around for a long time, you'll remember the ridiculous Reese skits that I used to do. But yeah, the first book review I ever did was City We Became, which is still an excellent book. Highly recommend.
That hour went so quickly.
I could
feel like
honestly talk about this stuff forever.
I know. I feel like we could have sat here for hours. But if people do want to hear you talk more, you are both on a panel tomorrow, which is really exciting, which is Book Talk and Bookagram Powerhouses. And that is a stacked panel. I will not be on it, but I will be watching. So I'm very excited for that. So thanks, everyone, for joining us. We had so much fun. I hope you're enjoying OwlCrate-A-Con and our second panel, which was great. And remember, you can catch the replay of this video as well in our past author chats here in the Nest. And then be sure to tune into the next panel, which is going to be amazing. It's called Making Magic in Literature. And it's going to have Kendall Blake, Samantha Shannon, Gina Chen, and Gabe, who we mentioned earlier as well for Wicked Bargains. Love that book here. So that panel is going to be happening at 4 p.m. East or 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, right here on the Nest. And yeah, thank you both so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, your questions, amazing.
And thanks everyone for watching and typing in extra questions. It was a great time. So, and we'll see you in the next panel shortly. Bye.
Bye.